Greetings everyone, Umby here, and we're back with week 2 of the VGC Draft League, where I'm up against my opponent KeystoneRecords. This is one of the teams that I rated highly from my analysis because of all the bulk and the great defensive type coverage, all around. Garganical, Skeledirge, Tauros, Arboliva, Corviknight. I almost feel like if you just brought that that lineup every week and then one Pokemon of your option, you have a pretty much solid squad overall. So I actually had a little bit of a tough time thinking over this one. So quick peek of the squad that I brought, you'll notice that there's no Goldingo here. Reason being, normally it would look good in general because it can hit so much. It's got a wide variety of offensive coverage. So versus the Garganical, you have the stat Make It Rain, and just in general, hitting everything with Make It Rain makes the game a little bit easier. You also have the Shadow Ball stab to hit Skeledirge hard, and access to things like Thunderbolt to hit Tauros and Corviknight hard. Seems like an optimal pick. The problem is, if I have to factor in Terastallization, if I get a wrong turn and they use Terra effectively to get my Goldingo off the board, that's a major part of my power completely gone. I'm having to rely on things like Rotom and Noivern next for damage, and I didn't want to be one Pokemon down while having to do that. So the overall goal was to create that power without the use of Goldingo, and go from there. I believe I somewhat accomplished that by addressing the major threats on their team one by one. So starting off with Gastrodon, using Covert Cloak, Terra Ghost, and some considerable speed investment into it. Earth Power, Ice Beam, Protect, Recover as the moves. So with Garganical on the squad, if you see the recent trends outside of this league, Gastrodon had 5 minutes of mention with the cloak, the Covert Cloak, to stop the Salt Cure from doing residual damage, is the way that it works. So it had appeal naturally from that, but there's also the potential that it would have been an Iron Defense Body Press set. And we're also hard-walling Tauros if it's using only double stab as its move. So the Storm Drain stops the Wave Crash, the Aqua Jet, the Raging Bull, while the Terra Ghost, if we reserve it for Gastrodon, will stop the close combat. So if we ever get into a late game position where all they have left is Tauros for their offense, Gastrodon just automatically wins. The next two pieces are going to be Hippowdon and Lycanroc, obviously the Sand Core coming into play here. There are a ton of last minute changes here, so there's some optimization that I missed out on. But the general thought process, one of the Pokemon that I was a little bit worried about was the Clodsire. KeystoneRecords brought it during their last matchup where they did some pretty good work with it. And I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to damage it in the long run, in part because I'm bringing Tropius along, which is going to use a Leech Seed. And for a moment I considered, okay, the Clodsire could be using Black Sludge, and I don't want to Leech Seed the Black Sludge. So I can't rely on Tropius to stall it out, even if I use something like Terra Steel, for example, to resist the poison. And even if I do that, I'm vulnerable to the ground moves that it may try and use. But you notice from its stats, actually, if we cycle over to special defense here, that it's got a pretty good special defense stat to go along with its high HP stat at base 130, but its defense stat is incredibly low. So while my team is really specially offensive, I considered, okay, what if we try and launch a physical offensive from the Hippowdon? So we got the stab, Stomping Tantrum, going into the Clodsire, who's weak on the defensive side. We can kind of work with that if they want to bring that along, and it's still pretty good in the Skeledirge and hits Garganical hard before any Iron Defenses goes off, if they opt for that. Naturally, I'm going to want to use Lycanroc next to it, and I cycled through a number of different sets, including something like an Endeavor set with a Focus Sash and Endure. ultimately, because I wanted to make sure that I could actually hit the Tauros without needing to cycle in the Gastrodon, I opted for Play Rough and Terra Fairy, because like on its own, Lycanroc's power is, even with the clear amulet to mitigate the intimidate, it's not enough to one-hit KO the Tauros without a little bit of extra help. So I'm relying on either Terra Fairy or I'm relying on Helping Hand to get that damage boost that I need. Everything else is just, you know, consequential, using the Rock Slide for stab, Protect to try and play around the turns, and Helping Hand to help out Noivern if I position it for damage. Likewise, Hippowdon has Helping Hand to help Lycanroc to get the boost that it needs. Noivern just seemed like a natural bring. Again, this was something that I also cycled through multiple movesets for, including Screech with Wide Lens, so it could support Lycanroc outside of sand, or even Hippowdon in sand to help boost the damage that I was just talking about earlier. It's all a circle here. Helping Hand or Screech, I'm trying to boost the damage that either of these two Pokemon are doing, particularly to the Tauros or even a Garganacl late game. But in the end, I opted for a Life Orb set because I want to run Flamethrower. With Corviknight in there, if I'm not able to reserve the Rotom Heat, it's kind of my next option to deal with the Corviknight. So I want to make sure they have Flamethrower on it, but on its own, it also needs a lift. Noivern special attack, while serviceable, is not the greatest, even with Life Orb. So I just want to maintain the option of power with Helping Hand. It's a cycle. Trust me, it's a cycle. Rotom Heat, another last minute change. Choice Scarf came in before my match started. I was initially looking at a choice spec set, something like Discharge, because I'm running, I'm running two ground types, and I'm running Noivern, who has access to telepathy. So Discharge seemed like it was, potentially a good move, especially with choice specs. I didn't want to run into, something like an Assault Vest or really heavily special defensive Skeledirge plus the Arboliva though. And I also want to make sure that if I was out of position versus the Tauros, like Gastrodon's either hurting or about to go down, Noivern has not found a position, Tropius hasn't found a position, I want to make sure that I had like an answer to Tauros in the moment. So I opted for Choice Scarf just last minute before we got into our matches, and it actually worked out pretty well for me. Also using Trick just in case they're using any support moves, I can lock those down, and given the lineup on their team, how bulky it is, and how much utility it has just from Umbreon alone, I'm expecting more utility from things like Garganacl and Ampharos. Choice Scarf just seemed like it would be a good move. But as far as how the matches played out, let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, match number 1. And we get a first glimpse at the squad that Keystone Records selected here. And we expected most of it, except for the Go-Goat. So Garganacl, Tauros, Arboliva, Clodsire, Go-Goat, and Corviknight was the selection. And for the most part, it makes sense. If they're expecting the Sand Core, the Hippowdon and the Lycanroc, and especially if they're expecting Gastrodon, which if they're bringing Tauros, they have to. This team seems well prepped to deal with all three of those through this squad, like completely shut them down. So I'm having to rely on my other options instead to try and beat them, and hopefully they get enough chip damage down to just steadily win the game from there. I was kind of expecting Skeledirge to show up in what would be the Go-Goat slot, but it does make sense. It does have Grass Pelt, which synergizes with Arboliva's Seed Sower if they get that set up beforehand. So let's get into it. First game, I decide I want to do some limit testing. I immediately lead my Hippowdon and Lycanroc. Because again, the idea with Lycanroc is that I have access to Play Rough, and the Hippowdon has Helping Hand. So if they want to get, kind of gutsy with the Tauros, I can try and go for the one shot with Play Rough. Now we both protect on the same turn, just trying to feel out what the other is doing. because I'm in a position, especially since I didn't bring Gastrodon in the first game, where if I'm not careful with my switch, they get a free knockout. So I go for a play rough here immediately just to get some chip damage out, and if they KO my Lycanroc, so be it. I can get pick up the KO with Tropius behind that. Now, smartly though, they go ahead and switch into Clodsire, possibly expecting the play rough or something like a like a Terra Electric that the Clodsire will be able to take. In the meantime, my Rotom gets in, taking a Leech Seed for its troubles, taking a Giga Drain for its troubles. Not too much going on here. There's no threat of a KO on my side, so I get a little bit of room to operate, but they go for a Terra Dragon, which means that slows down my offense with the Rotom. So instead, I opt for my own Terra, go for Terra Ground to get some damage down onto the Clodsire, which is shown the Curse set. And I'm sweating a little bit because the whole point of me bringing Hippowdon was to take advantage of its lower defense. But if it covers that with the Curse and I'm not able to do enough damage later on, then I may be in trouble. Especially since my Tropius is hurting from the poison from the poison jab, so I'm not going to be able to get a Leech Seed. But then two crucial things about the Tropius position here. Number one, it was at this point I realized, oh crap, I don't have Harvest on my Tropius, so I'm not getting my Citrus Berry back. I had accidentally selected Chlorophyll. Now still kind of sticking around and stalling for turns a little bit with the air slashes into the Arboliva, but that on its own is trouble. Part number two is, like we thought about earlier, the Clodsire is running the Black Sludge, so it would be dangerous to Leech Seed into that slot and play slow like we really want to. So instead, we go ahead and knock out the Arboliva while we can. We got a free flinch, fortunately this turn, so a little bit of RNG on my side. We stall for Protect. We're expecting another Poison Jab coming into Tropius' way while we take out the Arboliva with the Hippowdon. All right, so now we found a little bit of position out of what was kind of a tricky situation, and they bring back in the Tauros here. They go for a Wave Crash, and crucially, it doesn't KO my Hippowdon, so fortunately there. But also they get a free knockout into my Tropius, which gives me a free switch here. I wish the Air Slash would have KO'd the Tauros at that point, just to get me a little bit of breathing room, and so it didn't recover with the Citrus Berry, but here we are. And we get to use my secret weapon. I haven't revealed the item on Rotom yet, and it's Choice Scarf in the late game, getting the KO onto the Tauros like we hoped it would. And also Clodsire is in range of Stomping Tantrum to get the KO. So this was the type of situation I was talking about where, if I don't have Noivern available to deal with the Tauros and my Tropius was already down, the Choice Scarf was to come in clutch for a situation like that. So glad we made that change to bring it along. Now we're in a 3v1 in the end game here. They're trying to claw back with the Salt Cure. At this point, I still didn't know whether or not it had Iron Defense, but it's just kind of recovering for its life here because the double ups are just that strong. I was hoping the residual damage would take out the Rotom, but I go ahead and get it out. I'm planning to bring it back in at some point to trick it if they want to go for like another recover and then start doubling up from there and eventually win. Probably could just switch back in at any point and start doubling up with Terra Blast and Stomping Tantrum, but I want to be on the safe side. I was looking for a point where they would start Salt Curing again, so then I would just swap out my Lycanroc, expecting to recover, come back in with the Rotom, get the trick down, but they're continuously recovering, so I eventually just switch in the Rotom either way. Get the trick down just for good measure, and go ahead, grab the KO in the next couple of turns with Terra Blast and Stomping Tantrum. Okay, so yeah, a little bit of a weird matchup, and admittedly the Sand Core was not quite the move into this team. It could have gone any number of ways, and it was a little bit tricky there. If they had realized, or had if they had realized that I hadn't brought Gastrodon and were able to reserve the Tauros, I could have been in quite a bit of trouble if I wasn't careful. Moving on to game number 2. All right, so at this point, I decided that Lycanroc was not the Pokemon to bring for these next couple of rounds if we go to game 3. While it had the Play Rough to deal with the Tauros just as a contingency, it's not really doing anything proactive outside of that. None of their Pokemon really care about taking a Rock Slide, and because we didn't bring Endeavor, it ends up being an inefficient slot. So this time we opt to bring the Noivern to put immediate pressure on the Tauros lead if they want to bring it. But this time they bring the Arboliva and the Garganacl instead. Now this is still fine. They're still not threatening a knockout into me, and the Air Slash is set to do some considerable damage into the Arboliva. Now, I didn't expect them to stay in the way they did, honestly expecting like a double protect or something like that. Otherwise, I try for an Air Slash Overheat to go ahead and get rid of the slot immediately. Instead they go for a Leech Seed, which fortunately ends up missing. A little bit of luck on my side there. So they take a huge bit of damage for free. I go ahead and get the knockout with Overheat. That allows me to bring in the Gastrodon safely. There's not really a high likelihood that they're aiming for the Gastrodon slot there with like a grass move. So it was technically safe, but just to go ahead and get the Arboliva off the field is going to save me a lot of grief later, so I don't have to deal with the Leech Seeds and Strength Saps, and allows Hippowdon some freedom here. Now in response, they bring in the Go-Goat, and I guess they're predicting a switch because they go for the Play Rough. Now, crucial, well, not really a crucial point here, but just something to call out. I'm at -2 on my Rotom because of the Overheat, obviously. The Go-Goat, even at -2, should die to the Overheat. However, I'm unsure if it has Assault Vest or not, in which case I think it survives the -2 Overheat with the Assault Vest. Contextually though, that may still not matter, because I protected with the Gastrodon and the Go-Goat. I just hadn't seen its move pool at this point, but it wasn't really threatening a KO into my Rotom. All the same though, I switch out, just naturally wanting to cycle back my special attack stat, but it also helps me to resist some of the damage from the initial Salt Cure by placing the Hippowdon here. I go ahead and Terraghost, expecting the grass move into the Gastrodon slot, but instead they Trailblaze into the Hippowdon, not getting too close to the knockout, and I get a free Fire Fang and a burn for my troubles, which I think matters, because if they Horn Leech into Hippowdon, they get a free KO into that, but I also still KO back at this point with my own Ice Beam. They fire off the Salt Cure into the Gastrodon, but it's not going to be doing any residual damage while I'm wearing the Covert Cloak. They try and heal some health back with the Horn Leech, but the burn matters quite a bit for that. I was actually expecting them to launch that into the Hippowdon slot, hope for maybe like a crit, get a big heal off, but instead they aim for the Gastrodon. It's not gonna get too close to KOing me, and I get an opportunity to heal back up since I have Recover. I take the opportunity to heal back up with Hippowdon and make the job of them cleaning up much harder for them. Now, here's the part that we're actually waiting for. Gastrodon with Terraghost and Storm Drain and Covert Cloak is making life hell for these two Pokemon right now. They can't get any residual damage off with the Salt Cure, and additionally aren't doing a lot of damage on their own. They can't get the Wave Crash into the Hippowdon, so it goes down much more slowly since they're hitting less effectively, and they're reducing their own defensive stats as well. So in the long run, the Gastrodon is just going to do increasing amounts of damage to the Tauros, eventually knock it out. Hippowdon gets to heal up before Salt Cure does its job, and now it's just the Garganacl left to take a bunch of Ice Beams from the Gastrodon, or some Earth Powers to get the special defense drop. Either way, I just have like a huge advantage in numbers and power by the time we get to this point. So Keystone Records goes ahead and scoops up the game, but still overall well played. There was some interesting tech in their lineup that we'll go over in a little bit. So Keystone Records was kind enough to share their team sheet with me, and like I said, there's some interesting stuff here. You can see that they have the Arboliva with Leech Seed, Strength Sap, and Rocky Helmet. Once again, if they were prepping for the sand court, no, this made sense. Um, with them being physical, typically their moves are going to be, contact, so you get some chip damage off with the Rocky Helmet, get to reduce their effectiveness with the Strength Sap, heal up with Leech Seed, Giga Drain. If I wasn't able to, double up into this slot and take care of it in the second game, well, you could see in the first game, it was still a little bit troublesome. It took a lot of time to actually take down, and had I not gotten the flinch, they may have gotten the Strength Sap down to, heal back up at full health, and we've got to start that song and dance again. Mainly was the Terra Dragon, right? That kind of like walled off my efforts to KO it quickly. I would need to have the Lycan Rock back in position to try and play rough it at that point. But again, Rocky Helmet, if they get the Strength Sap off, it's not going to necessarily be an easy job. Perhaps if I use like Terra Fairy and or a Helping Hand, I get to blow past that. The Clodsire, Black Sludge, with me bringing Tropius and wanting to Leech Seed, I can't really Leech Seed it, otherwise I just take damage myself. It also covers for its own weakness with the Curse. So if it gotten a couple of boosts up, I might not have been able to do as much damage with the Stomping Tantrum as I did, and been in a much worse position in the first game. The Go-Goat has the Assault Vest, like I thought maybe it might have actually brought to the party. Makes a little bit of sense. With Grass Pelt on the grassy terrain that Arboliva sets up, it gets the defense boost, so you cover the other side, the special defense, with the Assault Vest. I think it makes sense. Unfortunately, the coverage of the moveset didn't really play out to its favor, and also getting that burn, I think makes a little bit of a difference in the closing out of the last game. And then last but not least is the Corviknight. We didn't get to see it in action, but this is, I'll say it's an interesting set. I'm not gonna knock it for something that I haven't tried or not fully understanding the thought behind it. But Salac Berry, Bulk Up, Power Trip, Taunt, Roost with Terra type Dark. It almost makes me think that they were prepping potentially for Goldingo with this, because Power Trip, I believe, is a physical Dark move. I think this would have made sense if you pair it next to perhaps the Gargantical with a Body Press set. Because like on my team, if you set up something like Air Defense Body Press, my main physical attackers get walled off, and maybe I'm forced to, if I brought Goldingo, maybe I'm forced to use that to nullify the body presses. And then on the opposite end, you have the Corviknight to do damage, to do effective damage with Goldingo being a ghost type, using the Power Trip. Maybe an angle like that works. This one I didn't really fully understand, however. But yeah, the other two, Gargantical and Tauros, those are just business as usual. Got Wide Guard again, I think is an option, prepping for the Goldingo perhaps. And then Tauros with just a standard moveset, Protect Close Combat, Wave Crash, Aqua Jet. Using Terra type Electric, possibly to help defend against any flying moves that I might throw out, or possibly even the Rotom Heat, if I like lock into a Thunderbolt's a way to defend against that. But yeah, interesting stuff from my opponent. GG's well played as per usual. Good luck in the next rounds. I myself, however, am going to be up against Eltrim 24 going into next week, so we'll have some fun. I use the term very loosely with the Dondozo matchup. We'll see if we can navigate it. Also have a little bit of time for trade, so who knows, we might see a different lineup the next time we go at it. Either way, if you are watching, I appreciate you watching. Appreciate you even more if you leave a like and a comment. I appreciate all insight and feedback. Either way, I will see you in the next video. Take care.